Okay. Well, welcome everybody. We hope the technology is working, but you join us in the new auditorium at Selwyn College. Yeah, welcome to the admissions talk. Really the plan for this is to hopefully for me to spend about 20 minutes going through some relatively kind of underlying ideas about how you make an application to the University of Cambridge and hopefully to Selwyn College. And then we're going to really open it up to the floor and hopefully you guys will come up with some questions for us. I should say at this point that over to my right, I am joined by the other two admissions tutors. So we've got Dr. Daniel Beauregard, who's the admissions tutor for the physical sciences and for economics. We also have Mr. Steve Watts, who's the arts admissions tutor. And myself, Stuart Eves. My kind of area is biological sciences and maths. As I say, really the idea is I'm just going to spend a relatively short amount of time going over the main ideas, and really hopefully it's going to help to provoke questions. So, you know, if there's anything that I talk about that you don't really understand, then please send it to us via the chat, and we'll answer them afterwards. There we go. That brief moment when things weren't quite working as I was expecting. Perfect. So making a competitive application, you know, the idea of applying to the University of Cambridge. What we're going to do is I'm going to start off with, it's never a good place to put this slide. So it moves around every time I do this, but now it's at the beginning. And I guess for me, it's because these are the really key things that I need you to know about. It's the dates that the application that are really relevant to your application. And the first one is that Oxbridge applications have an earlier UCAS deadline than the vast majority of certainly other universities and really courses. So the deadline for the Oxbridge applications is the 15th of October. So it'll be the 15th of October 2021 for you guys if you're applying for next year. And it's 6 p.m. UK time. So that is when your application needs to be completed by. That is the deadline. It's also shared with, if you're applying to Cambridge, it's also shared with the pre-admissions assessment deadline as well. And what that is that your school or your college will also, if there is an admissions test in your subject, a pre-interview admissions test, they need to have registered you by then that point as well. But I think really the most important thing is, I'm going to talk about those things anyway later on. But the really important thing is have in your head this 15th of October deadline, 6 p.m, because that's really when your UCAS application needs to be in and a registration for the pre-interview test is there. Now I have put on, if there's any aspiring medics out there, BMAT, the deadline is actually slightly earlier if you want to pay the standard fee. So just to flag that to you guys. Now, what you find is in a very Cambridge way, once you submit your UCAS application, we then get you to do a little bit more work, I'm afraid, which is we then send you back an email saying, could you please complete a little bit more detail? And it's something we call the SAQ, the Supplementary Admissions Questionnaire. Now, the deadline for that is the 22nd of October, so a week after the 15th. And why that's so important is I think some people, they get the UCAS application done and they breathe this huge sigh of relief and then decide not to check their emails for another, well, 6 or 7 days. And the first thing you may well see if you do is an email straight after your UCAS application, which effectively says, okay, I think we are not connected. So we're just having some sound issues. Do I need to restart? Do I need to restart? Has it been okay? Wonderful. Hopefully you did get that, but we apparently had some sound issues that I've been very helpfully helped out with. So yeah, just as a reminder that basically once you've submitted your application on the 15th, or hopefully before the 15th, you'll get an email that there's just a little bit more to complete by the 22nd. So please keep an eye out for that. Okay. So the application itself, you know, trying to break down what we're doing and trying to help you guys understand what we're trying to achieve. There's this kind of, I say handy thing, but there's this idea of the 4 Rs, the things that we're looking for, and I guess the things that we're really hoping that you guys can put together. The first one is that we want people to be doing the right subjects. So the really important thing is that you go away, you research, and effectively you work out what subject is right for you. And as we go through the presentation, hopefully that will become clear. But the general guidelines is that you might be interested in a certain subject area, but there might be a more specific course for you that suits you better. So please go away and research. What we find at Cambridge is we tend to have relatively broad degrees. So you'll find that we don't have, if you like, biology. We have biological natural sciences, and that encompasses some chemistry as well, and really a much wider range than traditional courses like biology. So just make sure that you're doing the right thing. We are lucky that we get to have quite high standards here. So we're looking for people with excellent academic records. And I'd always add that what we mean is excellent academic records within the context. That doesn't mean people that are necessarily with the highest of highest grades throughout their entire lives. We're talking about people that have done incredibly well in their circumstances. We're looking for people that kind of read and think critically and analytically. We're looking for people that are not just very good at learning material. We want people that can think about it and assess it and come to their own conclusions. And then the last R is revise. Embed your learning. We're looking for people that have taken this information on and can use it, and really are continuing to progress in their studies. So for us, they are the things that we boil our kind of, when we're making these assessments, they're the things that we really boil them down to. So how we get this information, how are we going to assess people? Well, we get access to an academic record, so that's submitted on your UCAS application, so we're going to be aware of that. We get your UCAS reference, so this is written by the school or the college, and really describes how they find you, how you work. We get your UCAS personal statement, so this is your opportunity to speak to the admissions teams and for us to get an idea of what makes you tick and why you want to do that course and what you feel you can bring not only to that course but also to the university. We may get some information on assessment, so we may well get some information about if you do any pre-interview assessment, or if you do an at-interview assessment, and there'll be more details on those in a moment. But effectively, we'll get any information on that. And the assessments are very good because, as I'll tell you later on, what they tend to mean is that everybody sitting for a place on that course has done the same assessment. So everybody who's applied for that course will have done that. So it gives us a really good idea of how people have done relative to others. We get some contextual data. Now, what that means is we get data about, well, we get it from home postcode and we get it from school postcode. But what it really tells us is the opportunities that people have had in terms of their schooling, their education, but also in a wider context. Now, obviously, COVID is something that has really affected people's ability to get opportunities, but it's still a really important piece of data that we get. Some courses ask for submitted work, so this will be kind of teacher assessed work, but that we also get to have a look at, and it gives us a feel as to what you've done during the school. Now, effectively, only some courses look for that, but again, we'll let you know. And the other thing we're going to use is performance at interview. So if somebody is invited to interview, what we're obviously going to do is look at how they've done in the context of their own performance, but also in the wider picture within that subject area. So that's kind of some of the key information that we're going to use in selection. Now, what are we looking for? So what are we trying to get from that material? Now, the next slide is actually a composite of the last two. So what I'm going to do is go through these very quickly, and then I'll show you the next slide, which is a new invention of mine, but I'm hoping is going to help make things clear. So we're obviously looking for people that are really genuinely interested in their subject. You need to be passionate about it, and we want you to be passionate about it. We're looking for a kind of core knowledge and ability and a technical fluency within it, so that really you can understand from day one of lectures what people are talking about. You're always going to be looking up words, that's perfectly normal, but that really there is this core knowledge and fluency there. We're very much looking for potential. We're looking for people that have done really well up until now, but that can continue to expand their knowledge and continue to make the most of the opportunity that we're going to be able to provide. So we're looking for somebody that's on the kind of upward curve of potential. We want people that are focused and determined. You know, we are lucky here because we have this wide range of courses, but you know, this is a university that does have some very challenging degrees, and we want people that are going to thrive. And what that means is we want people that are going to be determined to do well and that are really focused on their course so that they can make the most of it. We want people that can learn independently. Now, I've added in there, but with direction. We don't mean that we want people that we can basically give a handful of lecture notes to, you know, and push them off into their room or the library and say, we'll see you in 6 months. We want people that can kind of take what we do in lectures and take what we do in supervisions, but then go away and make more of it and come back to us with questions and go away and read the books. That's really important to us. We want a good fit between the applicant and the course. So you've got to be doing, like I say, the right course for you, what feels like the right thing that will get you where you want to go. And in some cases, we might be looking for vocational commitment. So I'm thinking of medicine, I'm thinking of veterinary, architecture, where really there also needs to be a demonstration that you've engaged with the career to some degree. And again, there has to be that caveat of it's been very difficult with the current situation, but they're all things that we are potentially looking for and things that you should be aware of. Okay. So this is hopefully my genius new slide. I'll wait for thumbs up and thumbs down from my colleagues, but I tried to then mix together those two last slides. And as I said at the top, it'd be very wrong to think of this as a list of absolutes. It's absolutely not that. What it is to try and get you to understand how we use the various elements of the application to answer those questions. So to just pick a few out, you know, if we are looking at the top one, genuine subject interest, we may well find that out in the interview if that person gets to interview, because hopefully they can show their enthusiasm in there. It would be a really good thing to try and show in the personal statement that you're enthusiastic about the course and think about ways that you can show that. And we may well get it from the reference. You know, it's lovely if the teacher or the school's turning around and saying, you know, this is someone that loves their subject and they've gone and done all these other things that are related to the subject. You know, they're all great. You know, focus and determination is one of those ones that's actually quite hard to demonstrate in many ways. But again, we might well get it from the interview. We may well be able to see that somebody is very focused and they're thinking about what's going on, and that if they get a problem that they can't answer, that they keep going at it and they keep trying to work it out. You know, that is a very good sign for us. We may well get it from your personal statement. You might be able to demonstrate it because of some other events, you know, playing sport or something else where you can show that you've been focused and determined to do well. You know, that is how it may well kind of come together. So I won't go through them all because hopefully you can see how they're going to be illustrated, but that is what you're trying to achieve with the various kind of elements of your UCAS application. So I wanted to help with a couple of, I guess, where we get the most questions, and that's why I've put these slides in, because these are the things that tend to give the most questions. So one of them is personal statements. You know, what they're about and really how to do them. Well, what they are is it's your chance to speak to the admissions teams. Now, what it's often going to be is you're going to be speaking to several universities and several different courses. And you have to remember that you're applying to all of them, so that your personal statement should be written to all. You know, very occasionally we get a personal statement that turns around and says, you know, I've always dreamed of going to Cambridge. And that is a lovely thing, but you can imagine that the people at the University of Manchester find that possibly slightly galling. So please don't write to a single university, write to all of them and construct your personal statement where hopefully it fits. You know, anyone from any one of those universities would read it and think, oh, they're talking to me. That's the really important thing. Now, write with a purpose. So write with the idea of what you're trying to achieve. And what you're trying to achieve is, if you like, talking to us and saying why you are a good bet for that course, for that university, and to some degree for kind of student life. And I guess I mean the academic side. You know, it's wonderful if you can down a pint in 30 seconds, but when it boils down to it, it's not really our area. Okay, so the academic side of things. You need to be selective in what you're talking about. So be selective, be critical, be analytical. And what that sometimes means is there might be something that you're incredibly proud of, but if it doesn't reinforce the message you're trying to give across, then in essence, that might mean that you don't put it in your personal statement. And sometimes these are sporting achievements that you might be incredibly proud of, but you have to ask yourself what it is actually giving to the admissions teams. And that can be very hard, but it's an important kind of things to do. Sometimes we get big lists of these are my achievements, and you kind of end up saying, but I don't know what that means. How is that telling me that you are good news for the course, that you're going to be good at university? So that's the kind of idea. What should you cover? You know, we get this question a lot. What should I cover in my personal statement? I don't know. Well, you want to be saying why you're interested in that course. Okay, you want to be telling us why you are interested in that course. And that often means that you're also building in things like the relevant areas that you've studied, any experience you might have in it, you know, what your interests are, what your wider reading has kind of encouraged you to then become part of that course. And it doesn't have to be reading, I should say. You know, it might be that you've been to lectures, it might be that you've been to plays or workshops or TED Talks. All of these things are really good for saying, and that's how I know that this is what I want to do. And we're also, because of that idea of we're looking for people with potential and with room to kind of push themselves further, we're looking at your academic achievement outside of the curriculum. So as I say, that might be reading, but other wider exploration, any work experience you might have, any summer schools, any opportunities you've had that you think, that's going to show them that I'm serious about this and that this is what I want to do. So all of those things get built in. Now, I haven't seen the chat yet, so I don't know if this is there, but one of the most common questions is, you know, extracurricular. You know, we often get the kind of, I've heard Cambridge don't care about extracurricular, or I've been told that it should only be 10% or 20%. Or the thing with extracurricular activities goes back to what I said before, which is that what we want to know is what they have done for you that makes you feel like it helps with your application. So thankfully, gone are the days when we have somebody who says, well, I play rugby at a really high level and that is the thing about me, because that is great. Don't get me wrong, it's absolutely great. But, you know, gone are the days where we would have somebody who's a really good fly half. What we're actually looking for is people that say, well, what I learned from my rugby, what I learned from being rugby captain is I learned my time management. I learned leadership skills or something like that. So build your build your extracurricular activities to show us those elements that we spoke about. That's the really key thing. Now, to move on, the second set of things that we get a lot of questions about are the admissions assessments. And I guess I've built into that a little bit about the submitted work, if it is a course that does submitted work. Well, the admissions assessments, there's actually two types of them. Now, you'll only do one, but there are two types. The vast majority, and certainly the bigger subjects, do what we call a pre-interview admissions assessment. So this is actually done in the college or in school, or certainly it will be this year. What really the direction is that you want to go onto the websites of the courses you're interested in and actually look up the details, because there are many and varied, and it would be very hard for me to kind of really give a full appraisal of them. One of the key things is, though, like I say, check the registration deadline. So it goes back to that 15th of October deadline. Make sure you're aware of it. And it's actually your school or college that will be enrolling you. The advice I would give for them, now the whole idea of them are that you can't really revise for it. Okay, now I realise I'm just about to kind of almost go back on that. But the idea is you can't really revise because we tend to pitch it at the level of GCSE. So we tend to not look at the A-level syllabus. We tend to be looking at GCSE because we know that everyone has done at least that level. You might not have done GCSEs, but you should have done that level. But what is often good advice is go back and revise any areas of GCSE which you know you might have been a bit ropey on. So if you're applying for medicine and you know you weren't always that enthusiastic about certain parts of human biology, you might sit there and think, well, look, if that question comes up, it would be a good idea that I went back and looked at it. So there is that little bit of an idea that you can go and look at it, but you can't prepare for the test itself, because of the nature of the test is it tends to be questions where it's material you know, but it's phrased and it's developed in certain ways that it then takes you off and makes you use that information. Okay. The other great piece of advice for any exam you're going to do under time conditions is practice doing them under time conditions. So if you go on the website, you'll find that there's some sample questions and things. Make sure that you can get them done in the time you would normally be allotted. And that is just general good advice. The second type of test is at interview tests or at interview assessments. Now, these are, if someone is invited to interview in that subject, they might be required to do one of these instead. Now, you don't actually have to register for these, because the idea is, because they are done at interview, you're kind of automatically, by being invited to interview, you are enrolled in them. And again, the best advice is to just go and look at what's available on the websites. Now, finally, as I said, sometimes we do ask in certain subjects for submitted work. And really what we're going to be doing is we'll be contacting you once the application comes in, to ask for usually 1 or 2 of recent essays that you've done that have been marked. And really, they are things that not only do we get to look at, but they often form part of the interview. So it's something that we might discuss at interview. It's not a promise, it's just that that's sometimes how they are used. So again, the really good advice is, if you have submitted any work, keep a copy so that you can at least look at it before the interview, because it's a possibility that it's going to come up. And obviously, it's really good to have been prepared. So this is all taken off the website for the admissions assessments. Really, on the left-hand side, we've got the kind of which ones are pre-interview assessments, and then which ones are at interview assessments. Some colleges also choose to do certain assessments, so it might depend on whether or not you apply to that college as to whether you're asked to do one. Now, I know a lot of people tend to think, oh, well, I'll apply to a college where maybe there isn't one. I think the benefit is that if you do go to a college where there is an admissions assessment present in your subject, it's another piece of data that would be there. So it's a choice, but don't be scared off by them, because I think personally they're a really good thing to have present, that you know how you've done effectively compared to everyone else in that cohort. The other thing I've put up, we've got the website on the right hand side, we've got all the details, but really all of the details are on there. So I would really urge you to go away and have a look at those, just so you're aware of what's going on. Now, just to make everyone aware, because we now know the situation for the interviews of this coming round, so that we would normally have in December, we now know that for Cambridge, they are going to be the online format. So effectively, they are going to be done by computer, because we don't know the situation that we're going to be in at that point. Last year's interviews were done in a virtual format, so in an online format, and I think we're incredibly successful. So we are more than confident in pulling off that feat again. Now, the next bits are true for Selwyn, but I think are generally true across the university anyway. We asked for minimal kind of technology. Really, the minimum we need in order to do a virtual interview is a computer with video and audio. So hopefully the fact that you are seeing and hearing me now means that you have access to that. You can do it by phone if you have a kind of internet-enabled smartphone. I would urge people not to, but it's absolutely possible, and we'll work with you on that. You of course need an internet connection of some type, if possible plugged in, but again, Wi-Fi is absolutely fine. And then we are going to use freely available software, so it will be Zoom or it would be Teams. That is, if you like, the minimum requirements. And actually, for us last year, that was all we asked. So if somebody had the ability to write on the computer or anything else, we actually asked them, if possible, not to use pen and paper and show us on the camera, because that means it's a clear playing field for absolutely everyone. So we really are going to ask, hopefully, for the very minimum. If there are problems accessing that technology and you are invited to interview, let us know, and we will do everything we can to help. But the schools have been absolutely brilliant. The schools, the colleges have been brilliant, and it's mainly worked. The way it works is, if you're invited to interview, we will actually just send you a login to your email, and it hopefully is as easy as clicking on that login at the correct time, and it will take you through. It is desirable to try and access it from the school or the college if you can, really, because then you've got IT help and it's properly set up. But many people did do it from home last year, and that is entirely possible. So it's not a problem. We just urge people to try and do it from a location where they've got support if anything goes wrong. But what I would absolutely assure you is there is a protocol in place, so that if there are any technological issues during the interview, we had a very robust protocol that meant that most of the time what it meant was the old turn it off and turn it on again, and then we were straight back on, and then we just added that time to the interview without a problem. But if we have any concerns that we feel that the interview hasn't gone as it should have done, then what we did is we arranged a re-interview. So we feel it's a relatively robust thing. The problems were thankfully incredibly rare. It was a brilliant success, and I think it really has left us feeling that we can pull this off again this year. But of course, certain things are out of our hands, but everything is planned, hopefully. So to go back to an old slide, so what are the interviews? Well, typically you're going to have 2 of them. 20 to 25 minutes, and really what you want to think of as an interview is actually an interactive attempt. So it's our first chance to meet you, and it's an interactive assessment of you're interested in the course, as I say, what's brought you here, why do you want to do this course, your aptitude, your ability, are you kind of able to come here and really thrive and really get the most out of it. Your core knowledge and your kind of technical skills are also on assessment. So we're going to ask you some questions and make sure that A, you're up to speed, but then B, that you can explore that subject. And then the other thing is your capacity to learn with direction. So the whole idea of them is we're going to ask questions that they're things that you probably haven't come across, and they're based in things that you know about, but we're going to ask you about things that you haven't come across to this point. And that's not to be tricky, but that's to ask you to start putting the information together and start leading yourself in a certain direction. And that means that we will lead you at times. We'll be feeding you information, and we'll be giving you a degree of direction, and then it's how you use it. And it's as simple as listening to that direction and then incorporating it in. That is what we're looking for. Really, the idea is we're going to give you kind of problem-solving scenarios. So we're going to give you a situation where, as I say, it's going to stretch your understanding and your knowledge, and then there'll be a kind of discussion about that. And I mean, we've all been interviewed. Everyone in this room would have been interviewed, and we're aware of the fact that they are, I'm not going to use the word terrifying, but most people are that little bit nervous about it, and they are things that make us apprehensive. But actually, you often find that once people are in and once they've started talking, it does become a very relaxed and a very kind of communicative thing. So I would urge you that we are aware that it is a slightly nerve-wracking experience, but actually most of the time people leave going, you know what, that was quite good. And that's great for us because it says that in supervisions and in our lectures that it's people that are going to thrive. Now, I could bang on about interviews for, well, a long while, I'm sad to say, but what I'd say is there's a load of great videos on the university website and on YouTube, and I would really urge you to go away and get a feel for what they are. And then, yeah, to reiterate, what to expect from them, focused, challenging questions, new approaches to existing material, so things that you already know about, but we're going to come at it from a different angle. Expect prompting from interviewers. So don't expect us to kind of ask you a question and then necessarily sit back and let you talk. We're going to be asking you different questions. We're going to be kind of getting into things. We'll be politely interrupting, but we'll be trying to kind of gauge certain things. And it is also your chance to ask questions. So if you've got any questions about the university or the college or the course itself, it is an opportunity to do that. We won't give you endless time on that in case anyone thinks of coming in and just asking us questions the whole way through. We will get you some questions in, but it's that idea of your ability to say, well, actually, I found out about this. Can you tell me about it? We're very happy to do that. It's going to cover your academic work. It's going to cover your wider subject-related interest and how aware you are of it. So certainly, I think of the politics students, you tend to think, look, what's in the politics at the time may well come up. So it's those kind of things. Reading and other supercurricular things. So if you've done a summer school, if you've done something else, we may well ask about that and what you learned from it. And there may well be prompt material. So as a medic, I tend to bring, bones and bits and pieces so that we kind of say, what do you think of this? And obviously you run out the room screaming. That's part of what we learn. There is no hidden agenda to this. There is no hidden agenda to interviews. I've told you what we're trying to achieve. There aren't any trick questions. There aren't rights or wrongs in them, but we're very much interested in what you're thinking. It's also not the final hurdle. Some people do not do as well at interview as maybe we were expecting, but they still get made an offer. It is a holistic application. So it's not a final hurdle. It's not you have to ace the interview to get through. But of course, those that do well at interview along with everything else, that is obviously a really good sign. But please don't think of it as a final hurdle. Plenty of people who end up here and we see them on the first day of term turn around and say, well, I really thought I'd messed the interview up. And you kind of think, well, A, you didn't. but B, it's not the be all and end all, but obviously try and do as well as you can. So as I wrap my bit up, I think I promised 20 minutes and I think I've already blown that, but there we go. The kind of, to turn it on its head, common pitfalls, or at least the things that are useful to consider, the common reasons why potentially people might not go too far in the application process. One might be that they've chosen the wrong subject. Now that seems a bit clumsy, but in effect, sometimes people aren't aware of the different subject options, and they may have chosen the wrong thing, or they're doing a course that they're not passionate about. They've been driven towards a certain course, and again, I tend to think about things like medicine and law, where it's not their passion, it's just that somebody thinks that that's the thing that they should be doing. You need to do something that you're really passionate about, that you're going to enjoy, that you're going to thrive. So that is one of the things. That subject knowledge is insecure, so you're just not as confident on the material, and maybe you're just not working to that level that means that somebody can come here and absolutely thrive on the undergraduate course. That people have done maybe really well at school, but they haven't explored more around the subject. So they've been very good on the syllabus, but they maybe haven't extended it outwards. And again, we're looking for people that, again, it shows your enthusiasm and it shows your interest in the subject if you've then explored it and you've gone and seen lots of different uses of that material. Poor organisation, if it's somebody that finds it difficult to organise themselves, that can be very difficult in any undergraduate degree, where so much of it is down to how you run your time. Inability to engage with the questions asked, so certainly at interview, unable to really take the information we're giving and take it further. That is obviously something that we're very much looking for. So we tend to get textbooks answers, but we can't take it further. Even with prompting, people struggle to take it further. Insufficient clarity of thought or analytical engagement. So, just taking what you've been told as read. Not being able to be challenged by it, not being able to say, well, what happens if we think about this? What happens if we think about that? So really just that ability to analyze things, to look at something and think, well, do I trust that? It's really important in medicine that we look at data and we say, well, actually, I see what they're doing, but is that really true? And thinking it through, really important. And yet unwillingness to rethink ideas. So if we start saying in an interview, well, I take your point, but what about if we think of that? If you doggedly stick to your answer, you might be right in a way, but what we might be doing is trying to lead you down a new path. And we're not questioning your knowledge or your ability. What we're saying, well, what happens if we now start to take it further? What happens if maybe what you learned at A-level isn't quite the full story and we're trying to lead you down that path? And again, I go back to my own kind of material in medicine, and a lot of things we learn, you kind of say, well, it's true, but it's only true until this point, and then you need to start building new things in. So you've got to be willing to say, okay, what I understood then did me fine, but what I understand now is I've got to be able to take that on. So as I wrap up, I go back those 4 R's, the right course. You need to be making the right decision that is the right thing for you. And sadly, that might mean that you don't choose Cambridge, or you don't choose Oxford, or you don't choose a certain university that you've really fallen in love with, based on the fact that, unfortunately, they don't do the course which is really, really suitable for you. Your academic track record, it needs to be strong and continuing to be strong. But what I would say is you need to be strong in your cohort. If you look around your school and you think, what, I'm good, modestly, I am good, then that is what we're looking for. Read around the course and explore around your course. And it doesn't just mean read, investigate, but it's not an R, unfortunately. And then revise, keep going over the stuff so that you're securing your knowledge. So I wrap up, and what we're going to do is move over to the question and answer sessions where I'll invite my colleagues back in. What I would ask for these questions, and I haven't seen the chat, if you've got a question which is highly specific to you, that probably is something that you need one of us to answer directly to you, then we might not answer it now. And what we'll do is, by all means, email us, and we'll certainly do that. But what we want to do is be helpful to as many people as possible. So often, if there's a very specific question, we'll leave that out. But otherwise, like I say, please do put them in the chat. And we've got our contact details out there. So we've got the website up there for us. And we've also got the general admissions email address, which you're very welcome to send something, and then that will get filtered to the relevant person. If not, I will stop sharing. I will invite you into the auditorium, and I will we'll start answering your questions.
Right, well, thank you very much for that, Stuart. We'll give you a rest now, so Steve and I will focus on answering the questions that have come into the chat so far. I think they fall into two main categories so far. Ones that relate to admissions, so much of the content of Stuart's talk, and then the second ones are more Selwyn specific. What are the rooms like? What are the rent codes, and so on. So I think maybe if we tackle the admissions focused ones first, because you want to think about the build up to making that UCAS application and then the steps that follow that. And then after that, we could have a look at more Selwyn specific things. So I wonder, Steve, maybe I could get you to answer the first one, which is if an applicant perhaps has some qualifications that they have done in the past, perhaps at GCSE level or at other level, where perhaps the results weren't quite what they desired, would the applicant have to include those in their UCAS application?
Then the answer is a straightforward yes. That all qualifications you ever received are a part of the UCAS application. It's the UCAS rule rather than ours. It's simply how it is. It wants to know everything you've got. In terms of what we then do with that, that's very much up to us. We would certainly look at such early received results that might not have been quite so good. And if there's been a serious change subsequently, and the thing we've seen done later being much better, much sharper, then we're more likely to store to give some respect to the later achieved results than the early achieved results, because you are quite likely to have changed. We recognise that people do change, they get better. They often change between GCSE and A-level, for instance, and that's hard as us to assess these days, as more the things have changed because of COVID and before. But nonetheless, we will go to the state of school reference, which might put those into context. So we are very clear, for instance, that those not such good grades achieved before aren't a good representation of your capacity. And that knowledge is for us a crucial knowledge. If they're not a good representation of your capacity, we'll pay them less heed and look at those things which tell us where you are now.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So I think perhaps just thinking about GCSEs and A-levels, perhaps I'll answer one of the questions about GCSEs themselves, and then perhaps Steve can answer a question about A-levels. But really the question is, are GCSEs important? Because whatever qualification you were doing at around age 15, 16, I think the answer is it depends really, so that different applicants will be on different trajectories, so that some of you perhaps have underperformed at that level, but you found your academic passion and you're now achieving more highly. So I think we probably would weight more recent data points, which would perhaps be things like pre-interview admissions assessments. We weight those more heavily, but we would nevertheless look at GCSEs. And we'd also look at the exact profile of the GCSEs, so that they have to be relevant to the course. And so, as Stuart said at the start, my area of admissions is more mathematical-based tripluses, so computer sciences, natural sciences, engineering, and economics. And so, if there is perhaps a sign of weakness in mathematics that's back at GCSE level, then I think that will be looked at very closely, especially if they continue to pattern through to later years of school. Whereas I'm sure that Steve will be looking at a different profile of GCSEs. Nevertheless, I think recent data is weighted more importantly. We do recognise that different applicants will be on different trajectories.
Can I just interrupt? Yeah. Sorry, if I can interrupt as well. One of the other things we do get is information on how you have done within your school. So I'm aware of the fact that you might look across at somebody at another school and think, well, compared to them, maybe my GCSEs aren't as good. But we do get a lot of data in the school. So if you have performed well within your school cohort, even if you don't necessarily feel like they are the top grades for the population, we do get to see that. And I'd emphasise that you're not supposed to compare yourself against absolutely everyone in your country or in the UK. We do get contextual data that tells us how you have done within your school cohort.
Okay, thank you. And Steve, perhaps there's a question about whether doing 4 A levels gives an applicant an advantage.
Yes, thanks, Daniel. This is a very common question, and it's partly a question because it's not a single clear answer. Because the university has made it clear, nonetheless, that 3 A levels will be enough. Anybody presenting with 3 A levels, because that's what the school offers, that will be enough to have a chance to get in place, of course, at Cambridge University and this college. However, and it's a small however, if you do have a chance to say, for instance, take further maths as well as, say, the 3 science subjects and maths, or 2 science subjects, maths and further, take it, because it can only show that you have got the kind of skills we're looking for. It's often a sign, if it's available, of your particular interest and your ability, and you want to show off that. We don't mind people showing off that ability. And some subjects, it's true, will prefer people to have done not necessarily 4 A-levels, but something that are taken as a 4 A-level, like maths. It's very hard to see what you drop instead of if you want to stick to 3. But the bottom line is your school will be able to offer a certain number of A-levels because of financial pressure. This is not at all usual, and because nearly all state schools in the UK that there are limits. We are not in the business of saying that you should be spending extra money every school. We are in the business of saying, look, it might be in your applicant's interest to allow you to take what you're capable of taking and what will best display your abilities. But we're not going to second guess that. We will still stick to our original mantra, where the 3 A-levels works. Sometimes 4 A-levels might be better, but usually there's a very specific reason for it. And it's worth asking directly the admissions students of the college that are applying to what status that would give to that 4th A-level.
Right, okay, thank you. There have been quite a few questions about interview assessments. So I'll just reiterate what Stuart said about the pre-interview assessments. You have to make sure that your school or centre registers you by the appropriate deadline. You must make sure that they do that. Now, for the interview assessments, first of all, how are they going to run if we're doing our interviews online, as Stuart said? Well, the university has a system, a virtual learning environment, probably similar to what you may have been using at school. In fact, you may have been using Moodle at school. That's how the university, or how the colleges and the university will run the interview assessments. So it will be done online, under timed conditions, done remotely in that way. So that's how it's going to run. Now, there are a few questions about 2 specific tripods, which I'll answer since we're discussing interview assessments. The first is, does economics at Selwyn have an interview assessment? The answer is no. For all of the tripods, if you look on our website, you will see there's an individual subject information page, and you can find that information there. So the answer is no for economics. That may differ from college to college, and that information will be available online for every college. I know it's a bit tedious to go through, so sometimes perhaps just sending an email to the college is a way to find out, because websites are not necessarily as well set up as our own one. I like to think how I want to set up well, since I do it myself. I'll send you the URL shortly.
Feedback welcome.
Yeah, and the other one was about law. So there is a problem apparently with Singapore applicants, and at interview law assessments clashing with A-level dates. So I'm going to investigate that, and I think that's something that, well, that's not something that we looked at college level, that would be university level decision to manage those clashes. So I would suggest send us an email, and that way we'll be able to provide you with feedback to you specifically about those, what we can find out and arrange for that specific opinion. So I think we've come to the end of this specific. Oh no, there's another one about gap years. Okay, so I think that's looks like it's about the final, specifically admissions related question we've got. So, Steve, how are gap year applicants considered? Is there extra pressure on their interview in terms of their knowledge of A-level content?
Interesting question, because gap years used to be a feature, a very important feature of it all came to admissions, because quite a large percentage took the gap year. It's now a vanishingly small percentage of people taking a gap year. It's certainly diminished in frequency. Time I've been an admissions tutor, which is a horribly long time. We do get them still, and we treat them as if they weren't gap year students. Is the basic, simple answer. Depends, of course, when they apply. Some students apply for deferred entry, in which case they're in exactly the same position with regards to A-level learning as the students who are not intended to take a gap year. The only difference is when they arrive. And we do not differentiate at all at that level. We sometimes would like to know a little bit about why the gap year, and sometimes if it's for a good academic reason, say, good year. Sometimes it is for not a good academic reason. We might still say, it's not our business. It can be sometimes, I mean, this is just purely anecdotal. I mean, if we hear you taking an entire gap year to sun yourself on a beach somewhere in the tropics, we might understand it. We just feel jealous. But we try not to let that interview our decisions, and we don't. So that makes no difference whatsoever. Those applying to however after they've done their A-levels, because they've taken their gap year and they're coming back for interview perhaps in the middle of the gap year, yes, we might well expect them to have done a bit more in terms of the subject you studied A-level, because you finished the course and you've got the grades in front of you. Not the case if we see you the December before you actually take those exams. So yes, you covered more stuff, and that other stuff might well come in to the interview. Although, as Stuart said at the beginning, we tend to be asking that higher to the content closer to GCSE content in many of our admissions assessments. So it's not content based, our understanding, it's much more skills, aptitude, all those other things. We didn't say you can play those things. We're not going to have the opportunity very often to make you an offer which says get these grades and you're in, if you've got them. If you haven't got the grades that we normally make an offer on, then it's probably not worth your while. It's a very good story indeed applying. But if you've got those grades, then you will be made an offer should we deem you worth one without any further qualification. And that's quite a big thing. So yes, we do take a bit of time thinking through whether you are of the same level as those we're also looking for potential either degree. I think that's pretty much it. And the gap year itself, in some subjects, has itself an importance. Engineering being the most obvious, here in industry, is something we actually think is actually rather good for our students. And there are some things which is certainly to your credit that you're doing, but not necessarily to the extent that it makes a difference in terms of assessment of your abilities. That's still the most important thing, the only sensible thing that we look at when we make our decisions.
Right. I think maybe we can start to move on to more Selwyn specific questions. So some of them are general, some are extremely specific. Maybe if we start with the most general one of all, which I reiterated in the chat, so you can all see it. What makes Selwyn special? So I think maybe all three of us could have a go at answering that.
But you start.
I will start. Okay, so I think what makes Selwyn special is what you'll see if you go to our main Selwyn website, so Selwyn College website. You'll see there it says, "Welcome to Selwyn College, Cambridge." You're a very welcoming college. Just under that, it says, "Selwyn combines academic excellence with a strong, diverse community." I think that's really important. Academic excellence and community. Okay, so that's what makes it special for me. Look at the prospectuses of all of the colleges, you'll see that 2/3 of them say they are friendly. I know because I've counted that. Selwyn says it's friendly, it's true. It's true of all colleges. So you can have a friendly college. We think in Selwyn that the academic excellence is very, very important, and so we take that very seriously to guarantee an excellent academic experience here. And then we really do have a very strong sense of community within the college. I think that's very important. I think part of that is because we're based on a single site, and so all the academics and the students, we see each other all of the time, we bump into each other. We don't have accommodation blocks that are far-flung corners of Cambridge. And the other important thing is that our community is truly diverse, so that we benefit from lots of different perspectives, lots of different viewpoints, lots of different ideas. That really makes for an interesting, diverse community, and that is both for the benefit of the community, so for us as we go about our daily lives, but also for the academic work as well. The importance of that can't be understated. So that is what I think makes Selwyn special.
I have a slightly conflicting sense here about my ability to speak about Selwyn special, because I'm also a fellow of the college, and I've also been a music tutor at the college for longer than I've been in Selwyn. I'm here pro tem before a worthy successor who is nearby takes over. But in my short time being a member of Selwyn, and that's as a missions tutor, but also as a my fellow and director of studies here for education, as well as somebody who's taught here for a number of years, various students in English. My impression is that what Dan has just said is extremely accurate. It does feel like a cohesive community, even though very diverse. It does feel like the sense of being on a single site operates this, I know this says everybody's in it together. And we've heard that far too much over the last 2 years. But here it happens to be true. And that, I think, is, and most colleges will claim something similar. But just seeing talk of what you see, like I can do about Stephen Selwyn, says it's particularly true here. For my area of being a business tutor at the arts and social sciences, it's also phenomenally happy because you can fall out of bed, preferably not in your pajamas, or preferably with pajamas rather than nothing, and go straight to a lecture in the citric side, which is just throw cards. And this is not an unimportant consideration in terms of proximity, and even for the weird stuff that these two do. You're not terribly far away from West Cambridge, not terribly far from the city centre. It's extremely well situated as a college, and it's relatively small size. It makes it very much a strong community. Anyway, I think probably enough from an outside.
And with an erring accuracy, I think these two have taken out pretty much everything I would have said. But I'm probably going to have to reiterate. But I think it's because there is a strong belief that this is the situation. Selwyn is one of those colleges where effectively we're medium sized. We're not one of the bigger colleges, but we're certainly not one of the smaller ones. And I think what it is it's that perfect size where everyone knows each other. but you don't really get the cliques forming. It doesn't become kind of certain types of group, and that leads to that cohesion that I think Daniel was talking about. We have things where I think, you know, as part of the fellowship, as part of the kind of somebody who runs and teaches the place, there is certainly a level of respect from the students, but it's certainly not a kind of an unofficial or a kind of a gap between us. I just don't think it exists. You know, you walk down and you talk to the students and they talk back to you, and it feels very much like everybody in it together, and that's really important to me. And then the other thing is that, okay, there's a couple of lawns here where basically we ask people not to walk on it, but other than that, all of the gardens are open, if you like, all of the time for everyone. And I think for me, that's a really strong kind of signal as to what the place means, because, you know, we all gather on the back lawn by the duck pond and enjoy what is an incredibly beautiful garden. And that is very normal for this place. So I think I can only reiterate what's been said with examples, but yeah, I think it's a friendly place, and it's a word that's tossed around an awful lot, but when it actually boils down to it, that's because it's wholly accurate.
Okay, so we're going to start on the hard sell now. We're going to come out with all the good things about Selwyn. So the first thing you notice was location. Right next door to the bulk of the arts and humanities faculties, exactly halfway between the bulk of the science community faculties and departments. So through your undergraduate career, it might be a bit of walking, a bit of cycling to get to different departments, and we're exactly in the middle of the science ones and right next door to the arts ones. So location is fantastic. We're right next to the UL, University Library as well, apart from having our own library upstairs where we're speaking and broadcasting now. And as Stuart said, I mean, I'm the chair of the Gardens Committee and I take great pride in the college gardens. Selwyn is different because it's built into the gardens, so you're really there, and it's part of your day-to-day life. You're always surrounded by lawns and trees and greenery. There's many other colleges, especially the medieval ones, they're built up. They have courts, which are a bit of grass, maybe some flowers around the edge. College gardens are somewhere else. That's not so nice if you're not allowed to walk on the grass and sit on it. So there are many good things about Selwyn. There are now some more specific questions about rooms and rents, and also facilities and catering and so on. So I think that we can move on to those. So I think I'll answer the various questions about rooms we've had so far. The information I'm about to say is there on the college website, but let me just reiterate it. Sometimes it sounds a bit more real if someone says it, rather than you have to read it on the webpage. So first of all, what works in Selwyn is all of our first-year undergraduates are living together in Sport, which is just across the road from where we are here. So it's all on a single site. You're all together, and so it's great because you will develop a real sense of community very quickly, and it's no effort to find your own social group in college. So those rooms, they're all very similar, are all en suite, and mostly about the same size. Some are a little smaller, and so there's a little bit of variation in the rent codes. And so you can make a request for one of the smaller, cheaper rooms. Now, my observation about rooms and rents is that it seems incredibly important in the first year when you're applying to university what you actually pay for your rent. I think you can safely assume that around all of the country, landlords are on the whole decent, and so like Selwyn, we're a good landlord, we'll be treated fairly, the rent will be fair, and it will vary from city to city, but my advice is don't focus too much on the exact rent cost. You're going to have great accommodation in the college, and it's fairly priced. There are things that make it a little different when you're in Cambridge compared with perhaps other universities around the land, which is that you only pay for the time you're actually in residence, which is about 30 weeks. You don't have 12 months contracts. Now, the reason I've taken the time to say this, not to focus too much on the rents, is because in your second year, this ballot system, you will ballot for a room around the college, And then there's a much wider variation in room sizes and lengths, and that reflects the fact that some rooms are en suite, some aren't, some are larger, some are smaller, and so on. Now, in that ballot, it is a fact that second-year undergraduates who are high up in the ballot list never go for the smaller, cheaper rooms. Because already by the second year, they realise they're getting a good deal, and they'll just go for a room that they like rather than be focused on the rents. So that's why I said that. But you can state a room preference. There are a limited number of cheaper rooms if that's important. Now, what about other specifications for the rooms? We have fully accessible rooms. In the case that there are any special adjustments that need to be made, that's fine. Making requests for rooms in quiet areas. This is Cambridge, everything's a quiet area. So that's not a problem. You can make that request and sure that that happens. Then there's a question about typical rents, since we mentioned this. And so I'm going to just read off what it says on our website because I don't know the exact values, I don't have them in my head, but a typical weekly rent is about £170 for an ensuite room, and that includes utilities. So included in the rent is all of your utilities costs. And then it also notes on our website, the actual rent payable varies between £114 and £192 per week, depending on the size and location of the accommodation. So that's more a consideration for future years. So you can get a very small, cheap room or a very palatial, large room, and the price will vary accordingly. So I think I've answered all the rent questions. Steve, perhaps you'll answer a question about whether Selwyn is fully catered.
Right. I mean, Cambridge is a strange institution because it's got colleges, and colleges aren't just places where you live. It's not just all a residence. So when you're a member of a college, and everybody who is studying in Cambridge is a member of the college, say Selwyn, then you're part of a community. That community is interesting in that it isn't just sort of studying together, it also eats together. Therefore, the sort of eating together in form, whether it be cafeteria, lunch, or dinner, is exactly what you'd expect. Of course, you will have within your next to your room, or very near to your own study bedroom. Remember, which are all suite, so you've got the bathroom there already. There will be a kitchen, which you all got various names throughout the university, and they're there for doing stacks. They're really not for students. You can get by, and students do sometimes get by with bowls of cereal for their main meals. We don't encourage this. That's why, like all colleges, Selwyn prides itself on providing really good, nourishing, cheap food for main meals of the day. And you could certainly eat well in Selwyn, fully catered, as it were, for a very reasonable figure. Again, big dollar website. It's not probably necessarily the cheapest in the university, it's certainly the most expensive, it's as it often is somewhere. And then on top of that, there's all the social events, which might be part of, it's part of college life, like formal halls, where you can go again for a very modest figure. You can go and have a really nice way to serve three-course meal in the lovely hall, and it's all part of the Cambridge experience, and none of it is compulsory. It's all because actually the students are the ones who are pushing for more and more. It used to be, I think, the academics were insistent on our port and our wine with every meal, and our sense of being rather like some medieval monks having a rather rich existence, where people, students were somewhere below. really is or it hasn't been for 20 years. The formal halls are there because it's really good food at a really good price. And it's a lovely social event where you dress up a bit, you talk to your mates, you have civilized conversations, and you come out of it after a very good experience for a remarkably small amount of money. And again, it's all part of what living in a college could offer, which, say, living outside in rent accommodation, not in college, can't do. And you don't have to live in college, but the vast majority do. First year is compulsory, second, third year is up to you. I'm not going to live out because it's so nice, and you can always, if you wish to, live in and share that community aspect as well as dining, visitors, and yourself. And that's from the external perspective. I think you two would like to say more about food.
No, I totally agree. I remember formal halls, and I remember the first ones being quite petrifying, if I'm honest, for getting dressed up and things. But then you realise that all it is you're going out for dinner, or at least you're staying in for dinner with your friends, and you all just happen to be wearing a gown. And after that, I guess I've got kind of used to using them. But yeah, they look strange, and in a way we try not to use them on things like the website because we know it's very alien to an awful lot of people. But you quite quickly realise that other than the gown, it's just a nice meal with friends. You get to sit and chat. It's, as you say, very reasonably priced, and it's just a good time. So,
yeah, okay. Thanks for that. There are two remaining questions. One's about facilities in Selwyn, and I think it's best if I refer you to the college website. So if you look at the URL that I posted in the chat, you'll see there's a link to facilities there, and it's really just photographs. So you see photographs of the library. I've got two libraries. Maybe we'll reduce, just go back to one library over the summer, but with plenty of lots of library facilities, also different study space facilities. And then there are photographs of leisure activities as well, so sports, our college gym, and what else? Photographs of the dining hall, the cafe bar, and so on. And so then I think that was almost done, but I would like to pass over to you, Stuart, to ask you to answer the question: how active are the societies in Selwyn, in particular music society or music making, but societies in general? And then I think at that point we're probably overrun. Any further questions? Just send us an email. So if you look back up in the chat, you'll see it on the post very interesting. So back to you, Stuart.
How active the societies are? I guess genuinely the honest answer is it does depend a bit year by year and on the size of the society. So for something like music, it's always going to be a society that's very active all the time because, we're very lucky in having a lot of people who, whether they're doing a music course or whether it's just their kind of hobby and their passion, there's an awful lot of talent around. So certainly those societies are going to be active year on year. What you find otherwise is that sometimes people arrive, and I tend to use the example of korfball because it's the one that I have relatively little idea about, but every so often the society appears for a few years because you have a few talented players and they rope other people in, and then it kind of drops off when the really enthusiastic member graduates, and then it all kind of disappears. So I think with the societies, yes, they're active, but to some degree, it's outside of the remit of the three of us, and it really comes down to the student members as to how active they want to be on it. There's a couple of kind of provisos with that, one of which is that there might be, there is, if you like, the Selwyn College Rugby Club, or there's the Selwyn College Music Society, but it's not just people from Selwyn. Now, every college will have them, so it doesn't often happen, but there might be that one college doesn't have, say, a korfball team, but they become involved with ours. So there's a certain amount of give and take within the colleges as far as that goes. So it might be that in theory, if we didn't have something because it was a very niche thing, that somebody might go to another college to do that aspect of it. so there's that, and of course, don't forget there's also the university societies. So because we're a collegiate system, you would have your music society here, or potentially you'd have things like, you know, I'll change it. We have, well, rowing, the bane of everyone's life, but we do have quite a lot of rowing, and that includes people who start off not having a clue about rowing, but then just get the bug. And it might be that someone's so talented that, if you like, they kind of outstrip the ability of the college to, you know, you're rowing with your friends, but you're better than them. So there's the university societies. So, you know, I mean, some of my students, and I love them dearly, but you pull your hair out at times, because they're like, well, you know, Monday night I'm acting at Corpus Playrooms, and on Tuesday night I'm at the ADC Theatre, and then I've got the Selwyn one on Wednesday night. And you know, that happens, and I guess part of you encourages it, and part of you thinks, okay, and your work is where, but there are so many opportunities for them, and you know, if it doesn't exist, then you start it. You know, if your kind of particular interest of hobby doesn't exist, and of course as long as it's legal, then people start it. So yeah, I mean, very active, but really I'd encourage people to kind of not think, could I do it or not, and basically it's really about, can I do it immediately, or do I have to start it? Okay, I think we might be out of questions, which is hopefully means that we've answered everything. Really hope it's been useful, but I would urge that if anyone does have any other questions, and certainly if there's anything specific, well, first of all, there's a website. You know, go and have a dig around on your subject, and hopefully stay within the Selwyn website, because we're working on it. But have a look around there. But the other thing really is that you're very welcome to email us at the admissions email address, and if there is a specific question we can answer, we'll do our best to give you the best possible answer. Otherwise, yeah, thanks for joining us. Sorry for keeping you ever so slightly longer than we were intending, but hopefully we've covered everything. And we've got some other events over the course of the next 2 days, so please have a look at the website, and yeah, if there's anything that's of interest, sign up. Wonderful. Well, thanks to my colleagues. Thanks for all joining, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.